Hello Metallica fans, and welcome to episode number 1 of the Let's Learn and Justice for All Guitar and Analysis series, Blackened. Like my hopes and aspirations for you, the viewer, to actually learn these guitar parts accurately. Blackened, like a tuna fish on a Carnival Cruise line. Blackened, like Jason Newstead's bass part on this entire album. Moment of silence for Sir Jason Newstead's bass part. And also for every single note, every single time change, every single chord progression, and a full detailed musical analysis of Blackened by Metallica. Let's get it. Blackened is the opening track to Metallica's 1988 album titled And Justice for All. And boy, what an opener it is. The intro fades in with a short composition by, I believe, guitarist James Hetfield. Now, this introduction was so good that they decided to reverse the tape and play it backwards. And yes, I do actually believe it came out better by flipping the introduction around. You'll see how it sounds forwards in just a bit. But I think this is another production move that we can credit to drummer Lars Ulrich here. So point 1 for Lars. That absolutely iconic intro swells in with an increase of volume that eventually hits the first riff. A thrashy barrage of absolute carnage, brought to us and composed by bassist Jason Newstead. Now, of course, this duty has been relegated to the guitar, and since the bass track has essentially been deleted from the album, we're not entirely sure who should take credit for it either. Just kidding. Point 2 for Lars. Aside from that, we get 3 different riffs that constitute the main idea, verse, and chorus sections, all alternating with different time signatures. With all that in mind, let's get into the introduction of the song, but it's not going to be the introduction you're used to, people. Remember how I said that they reversed the intro at the very beginning here? Well, we're going to go over what was actually played that then became the iconic intro that we know today. So take a listen to that. We're going to listen to all the parts first and then break each part down as we go. So as you can see, when all is said and done, we have 4 different guitar layers going on to build up that huge, lush, beautiful composition. The chords on the bottom and 3 harmonies up on top. Let's take a listen to the chords only, and I'll meet you on the other side. That is a very simple chord progression using power chords that descend, using predominantly half notes to get through the part. Let's take a look. So we basically start on a low E, that's your 1 chord, to D, the flat 7, C, flat 6, and the B. Second time around, we have a change. Listen. That's just a flat 3, 2 to 1 in the terms of E minor. Alright, so that's a 3, 2, 1 of the E minor scale. Alright, then on that E chord, we descend once again to D and then the last time, we go like this. Ready? We just end right on the B. Alright, now ordinarily that would be a fade out. But that chord becomes the fade in of the actual intro. Let's look at the first harmony, or the main melody part that comes in on the lead guitar. A very cool melodic line indeed, and you can kind of hear shades of what was to come with the reversed intro that we're used to within these parts. So let's get into it. We start on the root note E. So this harmony outlines the bass, the root of this whole thing. Start on here, 9th fret of the G. Got some hammer-on action here. Ready? 1, 2. So it's a very creative use of the open B string at the end there. Now we start on the root, and we go to the 2nd scale degree with a hammer and another pick. Then you do the same thing. All those notes just outline the first 3 scale degrees of the E minor scale. The next part that comes in is the same guitar, but it goes up to the flat 3rd or the minor 3rd harmony now, while the other guitar remains the same. So check this out. We have... It's basically doing Mary Had a Little Lamb on the guitar, right? Alright, I'm just kidding there, but it does actually use the same notes theoretically. But in this context it sounds badass and evil, alright? So who knew that James Hetfield could make Mary Had a Little Lamb sound badass? Unbelievable. It's like Mary had a little lamb who wore sunglasses, smokes 3 cigarettes at a time, drives a motorcycle that blasts exhaust right into your face. American metal exhaust. That's what I'm talking about. So let's do that one more time. We got the second part. Alright, and that follows along the same chord progression. Check it out. Ready? Alright, so eventually it winds up resolving on the root note of that B chord. So very cool. Now the third part is very, very, very similar, and it goes like this. Check it out. So that's not difficult. It basically just changes a couple notes around there. I'll play it one more time for you. Look. Instead of coming all the way down, it just flirts around with the 12th fret, that root note B there. Alright, now the final part is where it hits its peak melodically, and we go all the way up to the flat 3rd again. Hammer, and then a nice half-step bend with a pull-off down into that F sharp. Now let's just take a look at what's going on melodically. This is the flatted 3rd. Going to the 4th, so that's the resolution there. But this, that's basically an A going up to a B flat. That's the blue note. Alright, so we're hitting the blues right there, which sounds very, very cool in context with the harmonies, and you'll hear that when I start stacking them together. But yeah, basically, da-da-da, blues, blues. And then eventually this becomes the 5th of the C chord, and then resolves into the 5th of the B chord, which fades off into the distance, which fades in from the distance on the actual recording to start off this album. So this could actually be an album ender, but it's the album opener. Now that we have the rhythm guitar and the main melody line, let's hear both of those stacked on top of each other for a 2-part spread. As you're playing this, you can feel the mutton chops slowly growing out of your face, just like James Hetfield had in the late 80s and early 90s. You know that badass haircut he had there? Super mullet, that's what I like to call it. And ironically enough, he plays Mary Had a Little Lamb in this introduction, so go figure. But this harmony basically plays a unison at the beginning, so I'll play through that and get over with. So here we go. Unison. Instead of sliding into the flatted 3rd, we slide back into the same note. We play the same thing. Then, little bit is definitely different, but that creates a really, really cool harmony on top of everything else. So listen again. Flat 3, 2, 1, flat 7, 5. It leads down to that B chord absolutely perfectly. So those two harmonies in a vacuum kind of sound like this. So because of that descending line, we get a perfect fifth and an octave on the beat. That continues on with another cool variation. Check this out. That caps off with a very attitudinal half-step bend, all right? Or I should say a double half-step. Check it out. And basically resting on that F sharp, that's the fifth of the B major chord, all right? So the harmony is pretty much perfect at this point. Now the last part, we basically come all the way and we change the harmony. We go to the root. Actually, no, we're keeping the harmony the same. This is the root coming up onto the high octave at the 17th fret here. So this one focuses on the root notes and basically goes 1, 2, flat 3 on that E minor with a double bend and resolving into the D sharp, which is the major third of the B chord. One more harmony we got to stack on top of there, but let's hear the two harmonies and the rhythm guitar. Now that low harmony doesn't come in until the third pass of the chord progression, so it comes in a little bit more delayed and basically acts as a building point for all the other harmonies, alright? So you have the two harmonies building, but in this case, we have the third harmony coming in, making it a huge wall of sound and a beautiful, beautiful harmony at the end of the day, alright? Let's just take a look at the individual notes. We start on a B. That's awesome. And that's all it is. It just goes right along with that, the middle harmony, all right? Perfect. Then we hit up the higher octave like this. Now that creates a whole shit ton of tension. Oh boy. Now that's a dirty harmony right there, folks. Flatted ninth. That's more like a jazz harmony or a gypsy jazz harmony that would be played by the likes of Django Reinhardt. Very beautiful, very emotional, very tender, very tense, extremely tense, dramatic. Alright, so basically, I mean, if you take that harmony and put it on top of the B, it sounds like this. Oh, sorry, that was an F sharp. Let's try that again. Doesn't really sound much better now, does it? Now, obviously it resolves, but that actually happens on the downbeat. A C on top of a B. Woo! That's a B with a flatted ninth, a sus4, and a flatted 6. I know you want me to resolve that so badly, don't you? Well, guess what? I'm gonna leave you frickin' hanging. But you can listen to the resolution on this full pass. Let's actually just take the harmonies and listen to those together, all right? And then we'll add the chords at the end so we can get one last hurrah, and boom, boom, bam, we're done with this intro, ma'am. Alright, Alright everyone, now that you have that all figured out, it's time to take those tape reels and it's time to flip them over and play them frickin' backwards. How about that, folks? But, well, now we actually get to go into the real song here. So we're going to learn how to play that entire intro as it is on the album, using the same articulations as are on the album, but we can't necessarily play it perfectly one-to-one. We have to relearn the whole thing, trust me. I had to learn this thing twice because it's two completely different animals moving backwards than forwards. So let's take a listen to the whole backwards intro. It's basically going to be all the guitars you hear on the album. I'm just not going to fade them in. I'm going to come in real hot with a bang, and just take a listen at everything that's happening. And we're going to go through all four parts just like we did with the forwards introduction. So here's the backwards introduction, all the guitars together, and then we'll break it down. Chords first. Once again, these are very easy. We actually start off by holding out that B chord like this. Now, I don't think there's any volume pedal in the world that can give us a long fade like is on the actual album, but hey, if you have enough sustain on your guitar and you have the patience to try and figure that out, go for it. I just hit it and just let it rock until basically it comes into the C chord. Perfectly backwards. See that? Remember on the other introduction, the forwards, it went like this. Well, here it's going right, then hitting the B chord again. So it's really, really cool, and it's kind of crazy how it worked out so perfectly because I hear it like this. Just the way it is on the album, and maybe it's because I'm biased because I'm used to hearing it like that, but in all honesty I think it sounds better that way, and it's just so iconic. I always remember this. It just sounded so epic. But yeah, that basically just goes one more, and then here we hit the final E chord, which basically swells even louder. They use volume automation and whatnot to make that happen, so don't worry about that. Just hit the damn chord and hold it out for a couple beats, would ya? Now let's take a listen to the first harmony that comes in. So unlike before, we're going to start up in the high register. So let's just take a listen to that solo first. Once again, I hope you have tons of sustain on your guitar because, yeah, the tail end of this has to be just as loud as the beginning. Now, I'll admit, I didn't spend all the time trying to get the perfect amount of sustain here. I could have gotten my Fernandez guitar out and done the sustainer thing, but I figured, let's just go organic with it here, folks. We'll use the John Petrucci Ibanez for all this crap. So here we go. We start up here, and then here's C. D, E. Now in this case, we're doing a sus4 resolution into the flatted third. Okay, much like we heard in the forwards part, but this time we're hitting it at the end of the cadence instead of at the beginning. So, go figure, it's a reverse guitar part. What else do you want from me, folks? The second part goes like this. We actually slide down to a B, and you want to make that slide just like that, and hold it out, and then basically, like I I said, it's a reverse version. And then basically, instead of doing the slide downward, which we did before, we do a slide upward. And do the same melodic line twice. And then to end it out, I'm actually not going to play the open B string because I don't think it sounds as good. And I didn't use it when I recorded it myself, so we're going to play it like this instead. And that's the big crescendo that comes into the main riff of the song. But basically we're hitting the B and the D sharp. That's the root and the major third. And then this, a freaking awesome Lydian style idea, which then eventually resolves into the one of, well, the one chord. Alright, so let's get all that one more time. Fading in, then the C chord hits. Slide up. It just sounds so triumphant, right? Just incredibly epic and absolutely awesome. Let's do a quick chord melody of that. Starts between the B and the F sharp, that's the root and the fifth. And then here, that's playing along with the fifth and the sixth. And that's basically a half step bend there, so really it's going up to the flatted seventh of the C. And then the fifth and the flatted sixth of the D. So it's actually more dissonant than in the forwards version, which gives it a lot more life and flavor. And then that's that sus4 I was talking about. And then basically we go into here. And then so cool. And then we basically hit the almost sounds like a Beatles song when you play it like that. Super, super melodic and awesome. And yeah, James Hetfield deserves a golden ticket award for all this great music that he's come up with. Absolutely incredible. You can really hear the spirit of Cliff Burton singing through this introduction, I believe. Rest in peace, Sir Cliff. Jason Newstead, he's a cool guy, but he wasn't really included on this project very much, now was he? Alright, let's listen to the rhythm guitar and that first harmony stacked on top of each other. Now it's time for the second harmony to come on in. Now that harmony comes in on the D sharp, which is the major third of the B chord, alright? Except we're up here in this octave here. Ready? So we got D sharp, 3, 4, and C chord, extends. Then we basically drop down into the F sharp. That is essentially, well, not essentially, it is the fifth of the B chord. And then we have this harmony which goes right along with the top part. Alright, and then basically we rise up from down here. We go into the fifth once again. Same thing. And then it's capped off with the same thing that the first guitar plays. A unison. Now, doubling a guitar part serves to add a little bit of extra weight, a little bit of extra body onto something that would ordinarily be thinner. Alright, so this is sort of creates the illusion, along with the automation of the volume as it's going from a studio perspective. This adds the illusion that the thing is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and badder as it goes on, even though we're losing a guitar in the process. By this point, there's only 2 harmonies playing, and they're both in unison, and the rhythm guitar. Where when it begins, it's 3 harmonies, so go figure on that one. Let's play that one more time. Ready? Start on the D sharp. So with that dominant, we are on the D sharp, the major third here. So we fade in, the C chord comes, some Lydian stuff. Then we just gotta slide down to the F sharp, that's the perfect 5th. More Lydian. Then that goes into the 9th with another 9th resolution, and then 5th, same thing. And then the unison, which is exactly the same. I just can't get enough of playing that. It's so awesome. Hopefully you don't mind me repeating myself, because this is a lot of fun to do. Alright, let's get those 2 harmonies and the rhythm guitar stacked on top of each other. One more harmony and we're getting the hell out of this damn intro. Let's listen to that solo. This is the low harmony that comes in right out of the gate this time around. This time we're starting right on the riggedy root. Alright, so we're on a B, way up here. Alright, this completes the B major triad that we fade in on. And then we come into this. Now you want to be careful and make sure that you're actually doing full step bends there. Whereas the other guitars were doing half step bends, this one's got to be a full step, otherwise it's just going to sound wrong. So once again, root note, fade in, C chord. And we're pulling off into the 16th fret there. That's the 5th of the E minor chord, alright? And then here we're going. And then it's basically done by that point. It basically fills out the harmony that we have. So if you think about it like this, that's really what's going on between the 3 guitars. Just a cool little thing. Let me play you the first 3 guitars down here as sort of a melody here. So we got full B triad, going into a C triad, but real quickly. So instead of this just going down a whole step like it was just for that, it goes down the minor third, so it can truly encapsulate an E minor chord. This is basically an E minor triad in 2nd inversion, alright? So everything checks out there. Alright, so just like with that forwards introduction, let's listen to just the 3 harmonies playing together so we can get a good feel for that nice harmonic atmosphere that's being created here. And it's very, very Bach-like. Think of the greats, the great composers of all time. Just take a listen. Now after that big old swell, we gotta hit into the actual first riff of the song, but there's one measure of a band entrance that occurs before that riff is even played. Let's just take a listen to the guitar right there. Now here comes the odd time signatures already. If you didn't notice, just before hitting that riff, the E chord right beforehand is a measure of 2-4 instead of 4-4. Okay, so that's the first time change. Then, when this comes in, that's a measure of 5-4. That's right. Let's count that out. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 5, and then right into the main riff. Now, admittedly, it's rushed, so Lars played this quite sloppily. Let's listen to the drums real fast. So as you can see, he rushed those last notes that occur, which is basically a mute on James Hetfield's rhythm guitar, which goes like this. It's basically one extra note before starting the riff. Alright, so let me play it in context. You hear that little mute just before the riff comes in? That basically makes it a 5-4 measure. Now after that part, we hit into the first guitar riff, where basically it's playing by itself. Alright, so I'll play that portion first. Let's take a listen. So we're all by ourselves here on the rhythm guitar. All downstrokes, James Hetfield style, that's what we're looking for. And basically, we're starting the riff on the open E string, alright? And basically, you're ping-ponging between the open E and a note on the A string. And sometimes it goes to the D string as well, but you'll find that out here. So let's play it super slow, and let's take a look at that curious timing as well. So here we go. So we're going to go... Alright, so basically what's happening here is we have a time signature of 7-4. That's right. The main riff of the song is in 7-4. It doesn't feel like it's in an on-time signature, but it literally is. So we got to get used to counting this out. So let's do that super slowly. Now basically what we have to do is we need to start counting on the first open E. So this is beat 1. Everything in between is an and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? Then, the next 3 beats, you can actually separate this into 4 plus 3 if you want. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. And that'll give you the bar of 7-4. Alright? You can do that for both parts and it'll feel perfectly fine. But 4 plus 3, 7 all together. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. Now basically, let's take a look at some of those intervals here. Most of it is around E. That's our root. But basically we do this suspension and resolution, or tension resolution, on the flatted 2. That makes this a Phrygian riff, at least for now. Alright, and that flatted 2 is incredibly tense and diabolical. Alright, so you gotta get used to hearing that. It's an F on top of an E. Begging to come back down to that root note. The second half of the riff goes up to a tritone. Oh wow, so we have a flatted 5th, perhaps a sharp 4th, but that sounds like this. Let's listen to that against the E. Now that is actually known as the devil's interval. Alright, so back in the day, you get burned at the stake, they think you're a damn witch trying to cast a spell on some motherfuckers, and that's the whole idea here. So 2 of the most diabolical and extreme intervals that you can have back to back being played, well, back to back. Alright, so a minor second or a flatted ninth and a tritone in the same riff, so pretty damn cool. And with an on time. So this is about as awesome and cool as you could possibly get. The second half, we hit the same thing, but we take that tritone down an octave into this register. So we're still hitting a tritone, but it's down an octave. Alright, so 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and that's basically all there is to it. Let me play it at a faster speed here. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah. I just can't get enough of that shit, man. Freaking awesome. Now, you're gonna have to get that right hand really moving. Maybe practice, not masturbating. Don't practice masturbating with at this speed. You're gonna rip your dick off. Don't do it, okay? You might want to practice just simply holding the pick and using your wrist to go in extremely fast motion, alright? Maybe just practice going like this over and over again, alright? And then eventually incorporate the A string. But you have to move that quickly. This is basically a tempo of 192, alright? So the eighth notes are moving incredibly fast and you are guaranteed to get tired, so you're going to want to warm up before even attempting this, okay? So that's about it for that portion. Now, let's listen to the second half of this intro and where the snare drum comes in. Now, it's the same riff, but there's a very concerning difference that we have to go over. Let's see what Lars brings to the table here. He's literally just using his snare drum as a metronome. Now this is all well and good, except for one crucial detail. He's becoming a metronome on the wrong beats. He has essentially flipped around the downbeat and the upbeat that we were used to having prior. If you remember, the guitar riff started on beat 1 with the open E. Well, we gotta throw that out the window temporarily because Lars is treating the A string note of the guitar riff, or the second note being played, which is usually on the upbeat, as the downbeat. Now on the surface, it doesn't seem like Lars is doing anything wrong because he's just doing the quarter note as a snare drum. But the problem with that is that the guitar has to add an extra note in order to compensate. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, and 7, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, 6, and 7, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You see how there's that extra low E string in there that adds a 7th, 8th note onto that measure. And it's all because Lars played the wrong frickin' metronome on this part. Damn you, Lars, but quite honestly, it makes the song the way it is. It actually wouldn't feel right if he didn't do that, if he didn't fuck up royally on the timing. Because guess what? Lars has been known to do this. Fight Fire with Fire is another great example of a song that has a specific timing, but the way that Lars plays the drums, it makes it sound like it's the downbeat is in a completely different spot. Alright? Same thing is happening here, but only temporarily because he plays the groove perfectly the next time around, and he even switches it up later on, which makes me think he's a little smarter than I think we're giving him credit for. So this is another point for Lars, by the way. What are we on? 0.4? 4 for Lars, 0 for Jason? That's pretty funny, isn't it? The ending of the first half of the intro basically just has a couple of power chords at the end. It's so at first I always thought it went to the F sharp both times because it does that toward the end of the song, or toward the middle of the song I should say, but really we actually start on the G and then it goes to the F sharp, which actually sounds way cooler now that I think about it, and I would have not realized that unless I dug into the isolated tracks. So let me just play that the first half of the intro all by itself. Here we go. So we got it. Snare. Okay. It doesn't even feel like there's an odd time signature in there now, does it? Probably because it's moving so quickly. Now that we're finally out of the introduction, let's get into the verse riff, or I should say the setup to the verse. Now this riff is in 6/4 timing, which can be split up into 2 bars of 3 if you'd like. Let me just play through it. It repeats the same thing 4 times before getting to the actual verse. So check this out. Let me slow it down. Nice, so basically what's going on here is we have the open E power chord, that's the 1, okay, so our root. And that's basically 1 and 2 and 3 and. So that could represent the first half of this 6/4 measure. And then we do the second half like this. Okay, that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1. Alright, now a lot of tabs on the internet say that you play a pull-off there. But I was listening to the isolated tracks, and guess what? It doesn't sound like there is a pull-off. It's all just James Hetfield's motorboat arm going at full speed on downstrokes. Every note. Now the intervals that we're playing here, we're basically going from the E chord, which is the 1, right into a tritone. Alright, so the root and the flat 5 are being explicitly outlined. And then basically using something very simple, or similar, not simple, similar to the intro, except instead of hitting this and using the F chord, it's just going B flat and kind of doing a blues thing. After that, we head into the actual verse riff, which has a couple changes in it. Really just one major change. Let's take a listen. So when the vocals come in, we play the same riff twice, just like we saw. And then we kind of go into it a third time, but we have to change the ending. Check this out. And then we play the same ending as well. So take a look at that. We still do the B flat thing. Or actually, we don't do that B though. We go B flat. And then basically slide from the 2nd to the 3rd fret into a G chord. So all together, this is basically creating like an E diminished sound. Alright, so check this out. On the very last time, slide power chord. And then again. Alright, so it's basically ending number 3, and it's the only different one. Alright, so let's hear it in context. We have E, E flat blues, E blues, sorry. Here it is. And it transitions into that slide seamlessly. So you got to make sure you get that. Now, the very last time around, alright, when it goes... When we play this last riff here, it basically ignores the last, those last 3 notes in favor of a slide. Which then goes right back into the introduction. So just be sure to be careful and check that out. The next section is a short transitional riff, which is basically the intro riff, that goes straight into the chorus. Now, all that really happens here is it plays through the riff, and then it basically does a measure of 2/4 a build-up into the chorus. So, let's just take a listen. I'm going to include the riff just prior, and it's going to play through the chorus section, and then we'll go over it. So we basically have 3 bars of 7 and then a bar of 2/4, just straight 8th notes that leads us into the chorus. Check it out. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1 and 2 in. So it's basically just 8th note chugs on a measure of 2/4. Right into this. Oh yeah. Alright, so a super cool riff once again. There's no shortage of amazing riffs here, people. It's Metallica, for cripe's sake. Jesus. So we're basically starting, okay, after that build-up. 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. And then 3, and then 4. Blackened is the end. Bum, 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 and a da, 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 da. Bum, ba, da, bum, 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 bum. So essentially we have this sort of structure going E, which is the 1 chord, and then basically going from A, okay, and you want to do the full power chord. You're going to mute it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Okay, now that's D. That's a D chord, the flatted 7th chord, and then 2 and 3, okay, 4 and 1. Now that's basically a G, palm muted, to a C, palm muted. That's the flat 6 chord. Using the G again to go down a half step. A very dissonant interval, by the way, which is an F sharp. That's the 2 of the scale. Now, ordinarily, the 2 naturally would find its way in there as a diminished chord, but here, it's just a regular old power chord, because you know what? It sounds cool. And this is heavy metal, so no one gives a shit. We're going to play power chords on everything, you dumbasses. Now, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we go to the flat third, the G. Okay? That's basically just... Those are 16th notes followed by an 8th. Alright? Or 1, 3, and and then we go back again. D, triplet F sharp. And then of course our 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4. Now this is another opportunity to talk about Lars's drumming, or his lack of skill in terms of the metronome department, which really doesn't matter at the end of the day because he's a creative powerhouse and we have to acknowledge that. And on this album especially, he really made it known that he was the dictator here, okay? Now basically that last triplet is extremely, excruciatingly dragged. Alright? And it was done that way on purpose. And there's no way to really mark that on a piece of sheet music super accurately. You basically just have to say, drag these triplets in all capital letters, alright? Triplet, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then right into the ending there. So that's about 5 points for Lars Ulrich on the board here, and 0 for Jason Newstead. It's basically going to be a competition between those two. And by the very end, we're going to see who comes up on top. Now Lars is about to get another point on the board because take a listen to this. So as we can see, that's basically just the guitar riff and the drums. But guess what? The actual bass track does cut out there. If you listen to the isolated bass track, which I'm not sure actually exists, I'm not even sure if it's real, folks, but I've heard it. It's online. You can look at Jason Newstead's isolated bass track. Here, he stops playing entirely, all right? So it's almost as if the bass track is not even there to begin with, but then it's removed again. So Lars basically took the bass out once, and the bass is self-removing itself again. So basically, this is a double win for Lars, so 2 more points for Lars, he's at 7, and a double loss for Jason, so he's in the negatives. 7 to -2. Would you look at that, huh? And also, James Hetfield takes an L here too, because half of the guitars that make up this wall of sound drop out as well. Alright, so the guitar thickness is gone in favor of Lars's double bass, double kick drum. I guess just so you can hear it more. Wow. What an ego trip that guy Lars was on during this time. But guess what? I wouldn't have it any other way. Because by the way, this is my favorite Metallica album. So, Go figure how the bass is just completely missing. It's all guitars, all mid-range, crazy shit. I love it. So the form basically goes verse, riff, chorus, riff, verse, riff, chorus. But on this chorus, we actually play the tag or the ending 2 times with an added chord at the end. Let's see if you can spot it by listening to it. Did you catch that? Let's play the whole chorus. Ready? To begin with the dance of the dead, blackened is the end. To begin with the dance of the dead, along with blackened. Play it again. Blackened. Alright, that's a nice F chord. That's basically the flat 3 to the 2, again, flat 3 to 2, flat 2, which is the F, into the root once again so that we can start up with the bridge section, which, by the way, is slow, it's dirgy, it's nasty, it's like I'm joining a funeral procession that doesn't even belong to me. That's a pretty badass riff too. But before getting into that, let's talk about the 4 layers that exist underneath it, or maybe over the top of it, that fade out as that riff plays. So let's knock them out real quick. We have the first layer, which is an E5 power chord. That is the root note chord. Nice and chunky. Then we have a harmony, a mid-range minor third over the top of that. Now that's already quintessential Metallica, but we're not done yet. We have to do that same thing, but up 2 octaves from there. So basically we're going to take that root note and go all the way up to this high register. And that is going to be harmonized by another flatted third above. And all 4 of them sound like this. All fading out as the riff continues. And those 2 high harmonies, they're actually sustained all the way through until the drums come in. It's very low volume and kind of hard to hear, and it sounds like a sustainer system was used to keep those notes going for the entire time. They almost kind of fade in too, but I think that's because the other guitars have to fade out first before they can come in. So just another cool production trick. And the reason why there's 4 of them, I believe, is because James Hetfield, he recorded 4 different guitars. He always quad-tracked his guitars, especially on these early albums. I know Master of Puppets, quad-tracked guitars. And Justice for All, no different, quad-track guitars. So we have 4 layers now to sort of take up all this space, in addition to the other guitar. Alright, so there was probably another additional overdub that happened in addition to this. So pretty freaking cool. Let's get into the actual riff. We start off with a badass slide going into this. That's ending number 1. Ending 2. And that's going to make up a vast majority of that riff section, okay? So basically what's going on here is we have a lot of the same intervals that we had from the intro riff, but we're basically flipping them. We have the tritone coming in there first, alright? So this riff is the root, the 4th, and then the tritone will be flat, and the root once again. So we have a tritone jump right there. It's a totally demented version of the blues. Then we go like this. We chug E5 power chords in between. You want to really make sure you're digging in, really scraping that goddamn string. And then we have these notes. Now that we're playing the same one, the 4th to the flatted 5th, and then we're going like this, flat 2, right into the root. That almost sounds like Space Ghost. Or something like that. Some sort of old alien sci-fi movie from back in the 1920s or whatever the hell was going on. Silent sci-fi with a creepy soundtrack. Maybe something a theremin would play. You know what I'm saying? And that's basically what's going on, and that's pretty much the first ending. So it's like this. Tritone, flat 2. And you want to use these fingers. You're playing in that spider position. Finger number 1 gets the 5th, finger number 2 gets the 6th, finger number 3 gets the 7th, finger number 4 gets the 8th, boy. Check it out. Tritone again, and this. Ready? We basically do the 5th fret here and then grace note into that tritone, that B flat, but this time instead of playing a B flat chord, we play an E flat chord. Ugh. That's really, really nasty, and that's a big old power chord. Alright, so that's a power chord going all the way down to the low E. So we have this low B flat, an E flat, a B flat again, and then an E flat on top, which sounds like this. Super crunchy sound and sounds absolutely disgusting on top of that E already ringing out. Alright, so we have basically this on top of this. Oof, that sounds absolutely disgusting. Let's hear that again. This is like CIA sound torture. Imagine being a prisoner of war in a United States prison and having to listen to that all day. Absolutely nightmarish. Alright, but here, luckily it's sort of like a dual focus because that note is already fading out by the time we get here, and this one kind of stands on its own. So let's get to the second ending, which basically goes like this. Okay, we got to do a nice slide to the root note. Tritone, octave, tritone. Okay, so this is explicitly just outlining the tritone. Really, another diabolical sound happening here. And then basically it does the same thing again. So let's play all of those endings back to back to back to back. Here we go. Ready? So we have... slides going in there as well. And those slides sound really cool coming in on the end of that riff. That's another overdub. So let's check that out. Here's just the end of the riff without the slides. Here's just the slides. And here's what it sounds like when everything comes together. Awesome. Wouldn't sound right if it were played any other way. Let's talk about what Lars and Jason are doing with the drums and the bass here. Take a listen. So while the guitar is chugging away on the riff, Lars and the bass are kind of gradually coming in playing different hits at the same time. Notice those accents coming in to sort of accentuate the riff itself. This might be the first and only moment of friendship between these two band members. So after that, the full band finally comes in playing that whole riff from top to bottom, but there's a unique ending that happens. So let's take a look at that. That's right, the transition coming out of that last E flat chord is basically a double slide, a super goofy one too, a very snake-like slide. It's like finding a copperhead out in the middle of the desert here and getting bit by it. And it basically goes to the tritone right into the E. So once again, we're really expressing our diabolic tendencies here, okay? So right out of the end of that, comes right after the end of the third beat, and that's what starts off the next riff, which is basically the bridge verse. And guitar side, it's actually very, very simple, and more simplistic than I even anticipated it to be, all right? And I'll elaborate a little bit more, but let's listen first. So just like I said, we start off with those first two slides on that tritone like this, and then head right into the riff, alright? Which is basically just a bunch of E chugs going to the E flat in a very specific manner. Check this out, ready? 1, 2, and 3. Then when you come back after the E flat, you just hit those 3 notes, all right? Or 2 notes, I should say. So, 2, 3. Instead of going... So I always thought it was like this. 1, 2, and 3, da, da, 2, and 3. And then you hit it again. But it's not. It's actually this. 1, 2, and 3, and 2, and 3, and downbeat. Actually hits it one less time than I ever thought it, and one less time than it actually sounds on the recording, alright? And then of course you basically go through that 2 times, and then you do the same ending, and it goes here. It does the same thing on F sharp, which then moves up to F, or I should say down to F. Theoretically it moves down to F, but within the position, to do that big old slide all the way up. It's basically a full tritone slide to the C, which then becomes the bottom note of that power chord, which is the same voicing basically. So and then we hit the riff once again. Yeah. Except I fucked it up there, but that's no problem because we got to talk a little bit about what the drums, well, not really the drums, what the bass is doing here. We got to talk about good old Jason. Let's just listen to the bass part. As you can tell, this is far more busy than the actual guitar part, which is just chugging on the static chord. He's actually moving through notes that exist within the previous riff. This gives it a little more movement there. Now I have to give him the win for at least trying to be included in some way, shape, or form on this album. The part might not have made it into the song, and you sure as shit can't hear it on the actual recording, but A for effort. And you know what? He's down from being -2 to being -1. How awesome is that? Before moving on to the next section, let's talk about some of my favorite drum fills during this part. There are 3 moments that really stick out to me here. The first of which happening just before the first bridge verse. Just some very well placed snare rolls to get us into that section. The next one is not as flashy, but also is an example of perfect placement. Some offbeat, syncopated cymbal crashes in between a couple of snare hits. Ba-da-bum, 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 boom. And the very last moment that really gets me going is the very ending of this section, just before it goes into the melodic bridge. Check this out. This is more so something I'd expect to hear in a Rush song. Damn, Lars, you wildin' out. So coming out of that final nasty drum fill, we hit one of my personal favorite moments in the entire song, an epic two-guitar harmony on top of a third guitar playing chords. So a nice symphony of Metallica-related guitars that is in a bit of an on-time signature as well. So let's keep the prog rock flowing here. Take a listen. So as you can see, we have three guitars to go over. Let's go over the rhythm guitar happening on the bottom. Now, it should be noted that this time signature is 6/4 and 7/4 alternating back and forth, okay? And I heard on an interview that Kirk said one of his big inspirations was Genesis. And he actually, this is on Rick Beato's channel, by the way, you can go watch it. He talks about Turn It On Again by Genesis, and this is the exact same time signature that exists within that song. Alright, so a 6+7 time signature. So let's find out how to navigate that with the rhythm guitar. We're starting actually on this high E and going down this descending progression. It might look familiar. Let's check it out. Ready? So it's basically reliant upon how long you hold that B chord for. Alright, so we have this descending progression. It's the E, 1, to D, the flat 7, C, the flat 6, down to the 5 chord, which is B, and then we do a little 3, 2, 1 to get back down to E. But this time the E is low, and it remains there the rest of the time. So basically what's happening here is we have that descending progression. It's based upon the intro. But the forwards version of the intro, not the backwards version. Okay, so don't get it twisted. So that's pretty cool. We're bringing back a part that we've never even really heard in the song to come back here as a recapitulation. That's actually how you say it. So that's pretty cool. We've never even heard the forwards intro in the song, but we're hearing it now. Basically being paid homage to in the form of this great section. So I think that's absolutely awesome. Anyway, let's get back into it. So really we have this dotted quarter note syncopated chord line going here, okay? So we hit the first one on the downbeat, 1 and down, up. Okay, so it's basically alternating downbeats and upbeats. Listen to that again. Down, up, bum, bum. On that 6/4 measure, you're going right into that descending line right after the B. One more time. 6 and 1. So those last two notes are on beat 6. Now, for the alternating measure, we got to hit it, the B chord, a little bit longer. So it's like this. Basically just hold it out for an extended period of time. Now let's take a listen to the first layer that comes in on top of that. We're just going to listen to it solo without anything else but that low harmony. This is the Hetfield harmony, by the way. So we have sort of this gradually increasing range going on here until eventually we wind up in the middle register of the guitar. So we start kind of low in like the middle low register. We're sliding into the 12th fret and of course following those alternating time signatures. And there's also a dynamic of palm muted notes versus not palm muted notes. So we're going to take a look at that. So here's the first part. Ready? I'm just going to go through the basically the first little section here. So mute, not mute, mute, not mute, mute. Not hammer, pull off, and then pull off. That's on beat 6. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it starts over again, and we basically go with the same thing here. And then here we go up a little bit higher, outlining that C natural, which is the flatted 6, a very, very, very tense interval. All right, and then we hit this. That's one little hit note there. That's on beat 7. All right, so this is that extra beat that happens. So essentially, we play the same thing and then just tag on the extra beat. So check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we finally go up to the 4th and the 5th. To the flatted 6. All right, so we're dealing with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, and the flat 7 down at the bottom. All right, so eventually we get up the entire scale, you know, whether we realize it or not. So that's kind of cool, and it's all just within this one little position here. Now, when you're going like this with between the 12th and 12th here, I actually like to switch to my ring finger so I can get ring, pinky, and pointer. It's just easier to play those notes rather than barring with the pinky. You can do it either way, but I find that to be the easiest way. Let's keep going. We got to go up a little bit higher now. Now we're going into the next harmony. Okay, so started on the root, now we're going to the flat 3rd. So now we're going to be going 3, 4, 5 on the harmony. Check this out. Ready? Pretty cool, right? So we're basically going flat 3, 4th, and 5th. That's almost G major. Then to the C, which is almost like a sus4, but we're still in E minor, so alright, we'll call it the flat 3rd. But it really is like a G major sound when you play it by itself. Very bright and happy, almost triumphant, right? Triumphant. Very odd syllable placement there. So we got enunciation. Okay, so we only do that for the first measure, and then on the 7, we go up again. We go. So that's essentially just one time on the original, 3, 4, 5, and then we go to the next range, which is outlining the flat 7 to the roots, all right? And then basically going up to the 9th. And just kind of hopping down that little pentatonic idea. So let's get that again. 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hands. And here now it's like the low note always changes, right? So at the beginning we had the root. This one we had the flatted 3rd on the bottom. And then as we keep moving up, the low note becomes the 5th. Basically we hang there, and then we go up to the next range where it finally ends. Now the final resting place here is back on the root, so we come full circle. All these harmonies outline the root, flat 3rd, 5th, until we get back to the root but in the higher register. So that's pretty cool. So let's just listen to that one part right there. We have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, and start of the guitar solo. Now let's get that entire section nice and slow here, and I'll count it. Ready? 1, 2, ready, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1. 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1. Alright, nice. So let's get the rhythm guitar and that first layer being played together. now that we got the bottom layer harmony, let's get the top layer harmony. Let's take a listen to that. Alright, so since the last one started on the root, this one's starting on the flatted third, and we're up a minor third in terms of harmony. So we're starting basically where the second, the lower harmony goes up to its second phase. Up to the root, and then back down. See that? Basically what happens after that is it stays in that range. So now we're in the 5th range of the E minor to the 9th, up. So that's where the other harmony ended, right? So basically all the shapes are going to be the same up until that point, but now we reach a brand new part. So check this out, ready? So we got 5, 6. So that's the very ending once again. So we're starting on the root, we're going 1, 2, 3. And that's basically the original one. See? But it's up an octave. And then essentially we go up here. 2, 3, 1, 4, 5. Look at that. The 4th, the 5th. So just for fun, let's just listen to the two guitars harmonizing with each other. So although this harmony mostly uses very consonant intervals as harmonies, minor thirds, major thirds, and perfect fourths, there is one part in here where it actually hits a tritone, and I'll show you. Check this out. So we have, those are thirds. But once we go up here, check it out. Those are the fourths, which I just described, but when it does the hammer-on and the pull-off, it actually has a tritone in there. So it has a really nasty interval in there without even realizing it. And you know what? Everything else is so loud and the notes are moving so quickly, you don't even really notice it, but it's there. And it's very hard to play, too. So check that out, ready? And then here it is. So it doesn't even sound bad when you have that, but it is pretty tense, and it is there, so I figured I would point it out for you. Alright everybody, now it's time to get into most likely the most anticipated part of this entire song, and that is Kirk Hammett's legendary guitar solo. But first, we gotta go through an entire unique rhythm guitar underneath the whole thing. So there are 4 distinct sections to this rhythm guitar part and to the solo in general, so we're going to split it up into 4. Starting with that first riff that happens, this one, it's sort of like a... It's like Dracula walking through a haunted castle. Let me slow it down. Now Dracula's drunk. Maybe a little bit too much laudanum. You know what I'm saying? Those old world sedatives. Basically all that's happening here is just the open E power chord to the G, open E to the F sharp. That's all that's happening. It's just going 1, 2, 3, 4, and on the last time you go E, G, and then B, C, just single notes like that. So pretty simple. And the very last time you hit two power chords at the very end. Okay, and then of course we hit this. Alright, now I do have a little bit to say about the drums for this section, okay? So Lars does a little bit of creative control here, so let's take a look. Take a listen to the drum part and listen for how it progresses and becomes slightly more interesting as it goes along. Those little 4-note snare fills become more frequent as time goes on. This gives us a sense that things are progressing into a different direction. As you can see toward the end, he does it way more frequently, in fact, twice in a row. And then of course closes off with a completely different groove than what we're used to. Also, get a load of this. Listen to these tom fills here. Now the first one was pretty good, but listen to that second one once again. Damn, Lars, you really wanted to get through that, didn't you? That's right, Lars Ulrich, once again, either he's going too slow, dragging the tempo, or he's going too fast, rushing the tempo. Now, in this particular instance, I can't be as forgiving towards Mr. Lars, because it's just so flagrantly fast. It's not like it sounds bad in the song, but it is actually pretty sloppy and it's pretty rushed. Very, very, very rushed, I must say. So, we're going to have to take a point away from Lars for this section. I'm sorry, Lars, but hey, you're still way up ahead in the rankings here. You're up 6 points to Jason Newstead's -1. What can you say here? So, let's get into the next part of the solo rhythm. This is more slashy, thrashy, not slash. So we're coming into a big old polka beat. That's right. Happy Louie and the Polka family would be absolutely proud to hear this moment. And of course it's a thrash beat. I'm just kidding, people. But it does kind of remind me of polka music to an extent here. A lot of clarinets in the C. Anyway, we're going to go like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's on the root. Then 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's on the flat 7th. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's on the flat 2. So that interval is coming back. So we're kind of leaning ourselves back into the main idea, but gradually and in a more unique pass here. Then we come back. So that one you got to do 3 of them. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That last one, that 4 and, is a hammer-on, and it's extremely tight. You have to make sure you land it right in the exact spot. So listen to all that total. 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, of course, when it's going fast, you don't have as much time to really think about it. You have to basically go 1 and 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. And then, of course, at the end we have a build, which then goes into the third section of that. Okay, so basically we're just hitting the chorus, the same rhythm twice. And we've seen this already. But at the very end it hits a measure of 5/8 before it hits the next section, which we're going to listen to all that. We're going to listen to the chorus bit and the 5/8 transition into the next section, or the final section of this solo here. That's right, there is a 5/8 transition, and no, this is not a Dream Theater song. This is Metallica's opening track off And Justice for All, and it's also not Rush. It's not any of those prog rock bands that you're thinking of. It's not Genesis. It's Metallica, okay? So Metallica, one of the most well-known metal bands, probably the Beatles of metal, we can call them, all right? And they're doing 5/8 measures, time changes out the wazoo, very complicated music here, all right? So let's just get into it here. So right at the end of that chorus section, here, I'll play the last time through. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you go right back into that really fast polka beat. So check that out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then right into that. So one more time, because I can't understate this here. You have to count 5 beats. 1 and 3, 4, 5. Right into this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 4 and bam. After the 5/8 measure, you got to hit into this. Okay, so it's an E with an E to an E. So you're ping-ponging between root to root. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and tritone on the bottom. Now, a lot of tabs, they say to do the 7th fret like this and do this chromatic thing. That is not right, people. I listened to it a whole bunch of times. It's the open E first. 3 and 4 and to the tritone, then to the A. So this is an A power chord. Alright, so we've gone to the 4 chord. Okay, so we got 1, flat 5 to the 4, 3, 4, then down to G, the flat 3 chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, up to C, and then back down to G. Alright, so 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then back to the same thing with the tritone, 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we just palm mute power chords, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, well basically actually got to hit an open E at the end, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right before hitting the next riff, which you all know what it sounds like, but yeah, I'm not even going to go there yet. So let's just play through this one more time. I'm going to play it a little faster now while counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's right. Let me do it even faster now. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Anyway, people. Now it's time to get on to the actual solo. It's one of my personal favorites. I think back to back, the last melodic section we did with the 3 guitars and then this solo is probably my favorite Metallica moment of all time. Alright? So let's get into it. Section number 1 of the solo. Let's hear it. So although this is only one section of the solo, there are 6 unique parts that make it up. So let's get on to the first one. I'll play it nice and slowly. It's how the solo starts. That's it. So we're just going to stop right there. It's basically the root, second, and flat third scale degrees. So the first 3 notes of the E minor scale does not get any easier than that. Very effective. Point we hit the second part, which essentially goes like this. You really got to make sure that you begin this correctly. Alright, so coming off of that 7th fret, you hit the 12th fret, but then you do a double 13th. And that starts a drop down from the note C, which is the flatted 6th, so a very tense note. So the doubled up notes are something that Metallica are known for, all right? And it's just an added little, you know, an added little depth to the rhythmic structure here. And yeah, a lot of doubled up notes, and it's just super tight. So listen from that part before. That's section 1, section 2. Double up. And then we come down. All of those notes from the flat 6 to the 5th to the 4th to the flat 3rd to the 2nd to the root to the flat 7th and the natural 6th. And you have a little bit of a pull off there at the end too. Until we finally resolve into the root note. Alright, so flat 6, 5th, 4th, flat 3rd, 2, 1, 7, and the natural 6. Now this C sharp, it's not the same as this C natural. Yeah, we had a C natural up top. Look, if you play those two notes together, that's what you get. So that kind of dissonance actually exists within this solo. That C sharp is actually creating a Dorian scale, the E Dorian scale, whereas the C natural is an E natural or Aeolian scale. So, now basically what you want to do picking wise is you want to hit the double. Down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, pull off, and into there. So when you're doing string transitions, sometimes you have to do the opposite picking in order to make it work, right? Because if you go up, down, up, you're actually getting closer to your goal. Rather than doing down, up, down, where that would bring you further away from the G string. Now the next section, section 3, is where things really start to heat up. Let's check this out. Ready? I'll play it slowly. Wow, okay, well that's interesting. One more time there. We start on the C sharp now. So we've kind of changed everything. We've also added some accidentals in there, like the A sharp and the D sharp, but we have the D natural and the D sharp in there at the same time. So we're adding a whole bunch of notes that shouldn't even be in there. Keep in mind the E minor scale just has an F sharp in it. All right, so putting the C sharp makes it Dorian. Putting the A sharp in there makes it a Dorian with a sharp 4th. So if you want to say it's E, it would be E Dorian sharp 4. But then the D sharp makes it major. So we're just going all over the place here. And this could have actually just been like a happy accident. But then he goes right back to playing D natural anyway. So I'm just going to say that it's a B major scale shape just thrown in there. And then it just happened to work, and then right back into B minor. So we start with this, ready? You want to make sure you're doing a hammer on the pull. Pick, 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 pick. Okay, so you got to alternate pick all the way through those. Faster. Okay, so don't miss that. Then you have to repeat that pattern once again. But with those notes, so you're starting on this F sharp, hammering into the G, and then back, pick, add the A sharp in there. So you have the first one, the second one, and then we go into the third one, which actually caps it off. So we have all the notes are the same so far. You know, we're still using the C sharp to the A sharp, but then here we have to shift positions and go from E, D sharp, and then back to the D. Very, very strange. And that's what finishes off the whole thing. I'm not saying that Kirk Hammett knew, like as a total genius, what to do here, you know, in terms of the modes and like, oh, I'm hitting a Dorian sharp 4 and this and that. I more so think that he was using the B harmonic minor scale because that's synonymous with that E Dorian sharp 4. The E Dorian sharp 4 is actually the 4th scale degree of the B harmonic minor scale. So if we look at this, that is the B harmonic minor scale, to be fair. The only thing is, in the rhythm guitar, we're not hitting a B, but we are hitting an F sharp, which if you have an F sharp major, you you have a major third built in, that's an A sharp. So that actually explains the A sharp there. So look. Playing F sharp, there it is. It's basically like a 5 chord that doesn't really resolve. So you can think of it like that. You can think of the rhythm as now centering around F sharp, which creates a B harmonic minor type of idea. This next lick that comes in is probably, for me, the most identifiable part of the solo. Not only is it finger tapping, but it's a very demented type of sound, because it's using a lot of notes that really don't exist within any easy key or any easy arpeggio here. It's just sort of a pattern that Kirk came up with and just kind of rolled with. It's quite dissonant, but it's also pretty exotic sounding as well. So let's just go through this really slowly. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, basically 4 different shapes here going like this. So check this out. We have the first one like this, at the 19th fret, 9th and 12th fret. So, and basically what you want to do with these is you want to tap and then do a hammer on and a pull off. So a lot of the times the tabs just read as straight down, tap, pull, pull. But here you're not going to get the right sound if you do it like that. You have to sort of do like a tap and then a trill like this. And do that twice. Just like that. Okay, and then you have to go down 1 fret with the pointer to 18, 10, and 7. So already we're starting to sound a little crazy here. Then we go down here, and then we go down here, and then this last one. So let's just do those slowly. Watch this. Ready? So 19, 9, 12, then 18, 7, 10. Then 18, stay on the 18th fret with the tap and go down to 6th, 9th, 69, wow. And then 18th on the B string to 9th and 12th on the B string. So basically starting where you were on the E string, but on the B string this time. Okay, that's a pretty dirty sound. And then we have this. We actually have 4 notes here, straight in a row. You gotta basically play that all in a row. Now that actually is all pull-offs on that one, so we kind of break the cycle on it. Not like that guy Aaron Lewis. So we're gonna go like this. Check it out. Here's all 4 of them right back to back. It's very hard to play slowly, but I'm gonna attempt to do it again. Check it out. Ready? Pretty awesome. It's really some crazy sounds being formed with that. So think of this as being in B, all right? Even though the riff is pitting, it just sounds right on top of it for some reason. So C sharp minor 7, and then we go down the fret here. We go. Wow. Okay. So that's this is a B minor with a major 7th, or a B minor major 7th chord. It's extremely jazzy sounding, actually. Check out how those 2 chords sound together. It's perfect, but it's really, really crazy. It sounds like I have holes forming in my brain. Gypsy jazz holes, if you know what I'm saying. Jazz holes. Gypsy jazz holes, that's what I'm talking about. And then basically the left hand moves down. So that makes more sense. This is almost as if you're hitting an F sharp chord. You see you have the A sharp. That's the major 3rd, octave down, and then the C sharp, that's a 5th. Alright, so basically C sharp minor 7 over the E to here, B minor major 7, wow, okay, to the F sharp, and then here we hit an F natural, F diminished, being tapped. So an F diminished over a B, which does make sense, you know, but it's still not over a B, it's over this. We're we're still assuming that this F sharp is the source of all of this B minor and B harmonic minor shenanigans going on. So, wow, really awesome. It's just a... Yeah, and you have that G sharp and the B. The G sharp doesn't really occur naturally in this idea, but it does create a fully diminished B7 chord. So that does exist within there. So that's, you know, that's one way of justifying and rationalizing that. But then we move right back into the previous key that we were in, now tapping E on the top. So we're going back into E, but with the A sharp. All right, so this can be seen as a couple different things. This can be seen as going back into that sort of E Dorian sharp 4. But it just sounds too maniacal for that. So I'm going to say this is outlining an F sharp 7 with a flatted ninth. So it's kind of like a chord that sounds like this. Check it out. So very much a tense idea, and, you know, really embracing that harmonic minor sound, but using an arpeggio instead. And then basically it just ends like this. D, E, D to E, which is just the root and the flat 7th of E. So it's like we're just doing all this crazy stuff and then just coming back into E like it's no problem. It's very, very hard for me to rationalize this any other way than, you know, listing out everything that happens. And then, you know, trying to tie it up is no easy feat here. But I'm going to say it's a B harmonic minor type of idea with a B diminished, fully diminished 7th, going back into E. So it's kind of crazy the way that this works. But one more time here, let me play it at an actual speed here. Wow, unbelievable, guys. So, yeah, we got to move on. The final part of this section 1 is basically some bends, and we're going through that same idea. We have the B harmonic minor scale once again. So let's just look at that real quick. All right, so I'm going to count all this as one being the same section, but let's just look at that. So you're bending up, whole step into F sharp, working your way into that raised 7th scale degree of the B. All right, so if you have your root here, everything's related to that. You have a bend to release and a little pull off in there, coming back into the E. Then pull off, or hammer pull. Then, so. Okay, right into that note, nice and tense. And then immediately from there we have to do this. So let's take a look at that. We're going all the way up into here. So same notes. It's still that B harmonic minor idea, but we're bending that high note into the C sharp. So it's still as if we're outlining the F sharp chord instead. So on top of that lick, we have another high harmony that comes in at the exact same time, playing all the same rhythms. So let's check out what that's doing. It's starting over here on the 17th fret of the high E string with a full step bend. So it's basically doing the exact same pattern as the lower part, but the frets kind of change as you hit the B string. Alright, so in comparison, the E string notes are the same. But once you hit the B string, the fret orientation changes, but the intervals remain the same. To keep them all in a perfect 4th interval. Alright? Now immediately after that note, we have to slide all the way up to the 22nd fret, do a whole step bend. That's what it plays at the end there, right? So right out of here. So this actually goes outside of our B harmonic minor idea, because look, we're going from here, that's the minor third, that's the second, that's the major seventh right there. Usually it skips down another third, but we have the skip here. Now it's basically skipping down the same intervals as the other one. Alright, now I don't think he used a harmonizer on this because the intervals change, right? They're basically playing thirds on top of this now. But then it goes down to the A natural. That's essentially a sharp ninth on top of this F sharp chord, which is interesting because look, you have the major third, which is a very common thing, right? That's the harmonic minor, and then we also have the minor third. Now when it goes down to the 20th fret like this, that's creating a flat ninth interval. Look at this, ready? Check this out, ready? That's what's happening harmonically on top of that, and then it goes and slides out of that to let the other guitar take over. So some really cool parts here, man. Just a little cool filler thing to add a little bit more life to that guitar solo, which already has tons of life to begin with. So let's just put those two parts side by side and see what kind of intervals we have. So that first part is utilizing perfect fourth harmonies. And the second half utilizes all minor third harmonies except for the very last note. So because of all these parallel intervals changing, this makes me think that he did not use a harmonizer for this. But that exotic gypsy jazz sound still makes me feel like I have holes in my brain from listening to it. Let's just put those two guitars back to back, or up on top, side by side, hop on pop, Dr. Seuss style. Top them up together, boys. Now here's the final part. It's just one recurring triplet-ish pattern. You'll see some of the rhythms there. You kind of have to gradually speed up as you get to the end, but essentially we're playing this shape 10 times in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that very last one, you kind of slow down the last two notes to hit along with the guitar chords and the crashes on the drums in the background. So you really have to listen to the rhythm track here. But 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right on that 10th one. And a big slide going downward. Now if you have some extreme delay, I'd put it on right there and just have it repeat ad nauseum. But you know, you don't actually have to. The rest of the band takes over at that point anyway with it. Alright, so it sounds like this. And then basically resolving to the B. But it's just kind of silly because we're hitting the last chord on a C. So it's actually ending on a C major 7 instead of a B chord proper. It does hit a B chord, but it's a dominant function because we're still thinking in terms of E minor, while thinking in terms of B harmonic minor, while thinking in terms of E Dorian sharp 4. Man, my brain has had enough from this first part of the solo. Please tell me you have something easier for me waiting around the corner. Alright, now onward onto section 2 where things really pick up speed. Now a lot of the stuff is a basically Kirk Hammett being himself, alright? So we've seen this on plenty of solos that he's played, and sort of just following suit with his past self, alright? So we're kind of bringing back shades of Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning with this, and I'm not sure if anything on Master of Puppets does this, but you'll just have to watch all the videos I did on that series to find out. Go watch all the videos I've done. I did Kill 'Em All up through here, so what are you waiting for? Anyway, the very first one is very simple. It's just a static bend, right? You have a static 15th and a bend like this, with some good vibrato going in there. That's basically creating an E minor 7th, alright? So you're bending up into the B, you have a D, very Leonard Skinner-esque, okay? Got a lot of Southern rock influence in there. Okay, and then we got to slide all the way up here. This part's incredibly difficult to play slowly, by the way, so I'm going to try my best. But we're going all the way up to the 22nd, and then to the 19th fret. That's your pickup into this. You have shape number 1, which is just whole steps from the 24th. Okay, that's regular, you know, E minor scale. Then, the 21st fret, that's a C sharp, that's a Dorian scale again. Which is kind of funny because we have a flat 2 on the bottom, so this is like Phrygian, Locrian, sharp 4, whatever the heck, natural 6, Dorian. It's Phrygian, Locrian, and Dorian all at the same time here. But it sounds cool because everything's moving really quickly. But yeah. Now basically what you want to do, I have it written as 24, 22, and then with 2 20s. Okay, it's not exactly that. You're basically making the transition in between like this. But you're still only holding down 3 notes, which is why I broke it up like that. Alright, so you're holding 3 notes down, but then sliding into each one as that last note hits. So, and then you go down another whole step, same thing. Then you just go down the E minor scale proper. Once again. So all that is E minor proper after that Dorian thing. So check that out again. 24, 21, 19, 17, with the half step there that time. 15, 14, 12, 14, 12, 10. And then we got to do this. Watch. We do, we switch it up. We have a half step, whole step. 13, 12, 10. And then 10, 8, 7. And that ends it off. That actually goes back into E minor. This is kind of like the Phrygian and the Dorian and the regular scale all at the same time. So check it out. Ready? That's it very slowly. When you can bring it up to speed, it's like this. That's the only way to get all the way down now. Full tremolo picking, all those notes being hit. So like I said, if you just focus on the 3 notes at a time and then slide, get to that first note in the sequence on the downbeat, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's going to be easy and no problem for you, alright? So starting from here now, 2, 3. Okay, then we hit this little bit of, it's almost like a B minor blues idea with some passing notes, but we have this. So that's kind of cool. Look at this, ready? We're basically bending into that B. We can say that that's the 5th of the E or the root of the B. But we do wind up hitting E, so you know what? I think I'm just going to relate everything to E again. Although, this is, once again, this is creating like a B minor over E type of idea, which is something that Kirk has done all the way down the line, just not as extreme as this, all right? And then we go straight blues mode. Watch. Okay, so that's straight up a B minor blues lick on top of the E. So like I'm saying, it's just B minor on top of E, just ad nauseum here, alright? So let me play it, actually no, we have one more thing. We have to do this little harmonic, 5th fret natural harmonic like this. Being raised up with the bar. So if you don't have a Floyd Rose or a floating bridge, you're going to be in trouble with this one, pal. So let's hop into section 3 while we still have our fingertips here. Now this one gives us a little bit of a break, and we're actually coming back into the chorus section and sort of giving shades of the vocal melody as well, but of course with more motion here. So let's take a look. We're just going to play it from there. We have this part. Let's just look at that. Alright, so that follows all the chords going through that chorus section. And effectively, we're coming out of that. Right when you hit back down, you got to hit that 12, 12, 12, which is basically an E minor 7th. Alright, so that's why it sounds so damn cool. And you got to mute this 7th fret, which is the same note that's being muted on the bottom, by the way. We're going. that's basically just the E minor scale going down from the root. And then a little triplet there. But instead of resolving on a note that actually sounds pleasing, we're resolving on an F sharp. And then we hit a nice barrage of notes that sound like this. So let's take that slow. Let's just go one bit at a time. We're still going up just the E minor scale here, so there's no weird notes attached to this. But here's the pattern. That's what you want to get down first. 7, 9. Okay, and then you got to do the same thing, but on the B string. So watch. So that time you have a couple extra notes you got to slam in there. So that's really the double pattern there, so watch. Alright, so one more time. Super slow. So nothing too crazy, and then we got to slide up here. That's a really cool line right there. So you're just coming up from the high E, and then using legato to get down to the fifth. So it's root to fifth. And then basically we follow along with the chords once again with this. That's a super cool part too. It's just basically the open A and then a pull off on this perfect fourth idea. And then it's still, you're going from basically a tension release to both of those chords. Alright, you're going E to D, but the chord is D. Then the second one you're going D to C, and the chord is C. So that makes sense. You just got to make sure you go palm mute A, and slide down palm mute E, and then palm mute E again, and then we have this. So that's actually a little fancier than normal. You actually have to set your pinky, ring, middle, and pointer like this. 12, 10, 9, 8, like that. So we get that little chromatic resolution down to the F sharp. Alright, so we're hitting the F sharp melodically once again. So before we had this, but this time we have the same thing but with a little extra chromaticism. So a lot of consistency in terms of the composition. Alright, so let's get this whole section. I'm going to go from the harmonic. Ready? We'll play it slowly. Alright, let me get a better one on that. Triple and bone. And then we end this off with a nice dive in the measure of 5/8, which then transitions very nicely into the next section, which sounds like this. For this final thrashy section, we basically have a series of hammer-ons and pull-offs. So a lot of left-hand motion here, very legato, but just pulling off into the open string, and then with an ending ripping on that big old whammy bar bend, the big wave at the end. So let's just kind of check that out. So we come right off of that dive, 12, 11, 9, 16, 14, 12, then 2, 4, 5, 4, 5, 7, 9, and then into the big old... Anyway, but we'll get to that. I don't want this guitar going out of tune here. For some reason, when I really bring it back and destroy the whammy bar, going all the way back, I'm basically taking it to the extreme that it can handle. It actually does kind of go out of tune a little bit, which is very unfortunate. But then again, this is not the original bridge on this guitar. I'm trying to find one. I'm trying to find an original Ibanez Edge tremolo that I can get on this bad boy. So if anybody's got any leads to an original Ibanez Edge tremolo system that was on the late 80s and 90s Ibanez guitars, let me know, please. And one with the sort of the stamp on here as well. It's black, all right? Black colored. Anyway, let's take a look. We got 1 and 1 You got to do that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 times. And then the last time, the last 2 times you're going into the 11th fret. All right, that's F sharp. Flat third, 2, 1. And then we have this. That's the 5th. Down to the flatted third again. Or that's G major. So you can see it like this. E minor to G major. Very nice melody, right? And then coming down here, we're going down to A. This is the 4th, 5th, flat 6, down to the 5th, until eventually we get back to the root. But since a lot of the rhythm guitar is on G, it's basically G major at this point. All right, so you can consider this as being like the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 3rd. So like a sus4 type of idea. So that's on every beat, by the way. Until that very end part, that's on 2 beats. So let's just do that slowly once again. 12, 11, 9, 2, 3, 4, 16, 14, 12. 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, and then big old wave, okay? So, one more time, I'm going to play that quickly. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and... And if you listen to the isolated track of Kirk Hammett playing this solo, you could tell that there's a hard tape cut right in the middle of it because it's a little sloppy. All right, I'm actually going to play that for you right now. Did you happen to notice that? All right, let's take one last run through this guitar solo. Just take a listen to it front to back. And then, you know, we're going to put it all together and just have a happy jubilation at the end of the day. Bum 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 bum. Hey. What an absolute monster of a solo. We basically have 4 distinct sections going through different tempos, starting in the tempo of that bridge, and then moving back into the thrashy parts of the intro. We even hit the chorus section again, so really it's a real roller coaster ride of dynamics, and well, everything's pretty loud, I will say, but dynamic in the sense of tempo shifting and going through, especially that harsh transition back into the thrash that happens with the dun 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 dun. And not to mention, we have all these different modes, right? We have the E minor scale. That's to be expected. But then we also have the E Dorian scale. That's not to be expected. But then we have the E Dorian scale with a sharp 4th. That's certainly less to be expected than what we already did not expect. Then we also have the B harmonic minor scale, which is the same and synonymous, but it's even less expected. We kind of tied it to the F sharp major, but we never hit a B ever, but he's using B minor as sort of like the proving ground for this whole solo, or the proof of concept of this entire solo, that you can play B harmonic minor over it's seemingly an E progression, right? But there's a lot of sleight of hand going on. It's a magic trick. And then we blast into just some classic Kirk Hammett, you know, single string going all the way down the scale, a la Creeping Death, with some more stuff, B minor blues, all over the E tonality, and then some really cool gimmicks at the end with those hammer-ons and pull-offs on the open strings. So A+ solo. It's probably my favorite Kirk Hammett solo of all time. Probably the most difficult of his to play as well, I will say. So anyway, we got to move on to another difficult part. And this one, we're not going to so much listen to the isolated guitar like we normally do. We're going to have to bring the drums into the fold as well, since, well, the riff is familiar. It's the same thing, which we saw as being in 7/4 timing, but the way that the drums are played makes it completely different than that. Let's listen to the guitar and the drums being played on that first time through. The first note of the guitar riff, the open E, is actually seen as a pickup into the new downbeat of this section. That's right, because of where Lars decides to start the beat, he is actually shifting the downbeat focus. So where the upbeat was originally is now the downbeat. So coming out of that last measure, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's the pickup note. The fifth note of the previous measure, which is that measure of 5/8, is now a pickup into this. That's where the downbeat lies now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, and then right into that again. So basically we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 5, 6, 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's basically a bar of 7/4 and then 2 bars of 7/8 to line that up. Coming in on the second time around, the very ending, Lars decides to flip the beat around once again to where it normally was. So if you notice on that first time, he hits 7 snare hits before going back into the beat. This time, he's hitting only 6 before returning to the same exact beat, simply changing the focus of where the downbeat is. So really at this point, Lars is changing the timing and the feel completely. And that basically goes back into the 4/4 feel. With 2 bars of 3 in there as well. So he's trying to make it feel like 4/4 as much as possible. But it ain't easy. But Lars, god damn it, you managed to do it. So you know what? You get another point on the board. That's 7 points for you, Lars. Lucky number 7. Jason is still at -1. Anyway, we continue on with the ending of the song. We basically just go through another verse, another re-intro. It's all the same with the never, never, and blackened and all that stuff. But the final chorus is a little bit different. So I'm actually going to play the very last time through the chorus section where we have some time changes yet again. So just like in the solo section, we have a measure of 5/8 that brings us back into the beginning of the chorus once again for a double. So let's just check that out. So we have 5 to begin with the dance of the dead. Blackened is the end to begin with the dance of the dead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There it is. Okay, so it's just using that bum, ba, da, bum, bum, boom, just cutting off the last beat so we can get back in, and it feels perfectly natural. I wouldn't have it any other way. And right back in. Darkest open sea. And then we do this. That's actually a bar of 3/4 on there, which we haven't seen yet either. So there's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2. Bar of 3, a bar of 4, and a bar of 2 before hitting the riff at the end. All right, so let's just make sure we really get that. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2. And that's basically the ending there. So let me just play that whole chorus once again. So we got 5 to begin with, we dance of the dead. Second, it's the end. To begin with, we dance of the dead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the outcome of hypocrisy. Darkest potency is the outcome of humanity. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. Alright everybody, that's going to be the end of this video. Thank you very much for sticking around. If you like the content, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. I have a Patreon and a subscribe store. If you really like this stuff, you can pay a little extra to get a little extra stuff, you know what I'm saying? I also give private lessons, so you can go to my website, www.romanovamusic.com, and you can take private lessons with me, people. Trust me, it's well worth your dollar, alright? So anyway, you can also leave a tip on the PayPal tip jar, and yeah, hopefully everybody enjoyed this. This has been a really fun one. One of my favorite albums of all time. Lots of stuff going on in this song. We had a forward intro. We had a reverse intro. We had a nasty guitar solo with all unique riffs strewn across. We had a slow and dirgy section. We had a fast thrashy section. It's basically dynamics out the ass when it comes to tempo. Alright, so, alright everybody. I'll see you around on the next one, and please like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.